one, isn't it? It's got the X-ray thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, the shower scene, they reckon that the actress who was actually acting in the film, she only did 3 weeks of filming, and one of them weeks was just that scene.
Really?
Wow.
Just 1 week.
She did a really good job considering that, I thought.
And like,
That was great.
there's bits in it that it kind of blew my mind, like the fact of she, you know, when you see the shower head and
Yeah,
the water's coming
sure.
at you
Mm.
from it, the way he did it was he had a shower head that was a lot larger, like huge. I think, did they say 6 foot? It couldn't have been. I don't think it was 6 foot, but it was big. And basically, the middle of it didn't have water come out of it, and he put the camera where the shower or head couldn't get it wet, which is pretty mad.
Mm.
Yeah. And another thing, Hitchcock, to test how much to see how well the woman would scream, he put the dead mother in a changing room.
Yeah, I
And
heard that one.
he waited outside, and he wanted to
Oh,
hear
fuck.
the scream from the woman to see how authentic it was, how loud their scream was. Yeah, fucking what a bastard.
Wanted to see if it was very, very, very effective.
I noticed his cameo in it as well.
You noticed what?
Yes,
His cameo.
yeah, Hitchcock's cameo. Right
Sure,
in
I
the
noticed
beginning.
that.
So when they're in the office, when
Mm.
it's looking out towards the street, you see him with a hat on.
Oh, okay.
He's outside the window. You see him through the window, and he's
He's
standing
got,
on the street.
he's got that face, hasn't he? He's got that kind of,
Yeah.
it's like a slug. Yeah, they're definitely the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I need to watch it again, just for
Yeah, I watched it twice this week, and like the second time I watched it, all I could really think was like, I really need to turn this down, because you know the bit where he sticks her on the meat hook.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I was just sat there like, man, this probably sounds very strange.
or the fact that there's like a whole 20 minutes of the film where she's screaming.
Yeah.
From when the bloke
does.
gets chainsawed in the wheelchair, from that point to literally the end of the film, she screams because
Yeah,
she
she
runs.
screams like fucking mad.
She runs from Leatherface screaming. She does stop screaming. It's when she gets knocked out and she kind of goes like, "Ugh,"
As you would, stop screaming.
and then she wakes up and then starts screaming because they're fucking eating shit. Yeah.
That is terrifying, though. Like, I think that's
There's a lot to talk about with that one. I feel like some of it is dated, but at the same time, some of it does still like creep me out, I have to say.
I think the problem with it's a bit like the problem with Psycho now. If you're watching Psycho for the first time, you probably know it already.
Yeah.
Just because it's so like iconic. And it's the same with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, if you could go into that fresh, that first scene where Leatherface comes out of the cupboard, it'd be like, whoa. But it's impossible to now.
Okay.
That was the thing. I watched the video and it was, I can't remember what it was. It was one of these ones where I got to experience the Togo Gore place, and that's why I picked it. But there's a bit where it says about the most shocking scenes, but like the biggest jump scares in cinema. And one of them, they said it was that, and they showed it. So I kind of already knew there was. I'm like, oh, this is the bit. Where's the bit where he just jumps out? Yeah, and it's that fucking scene where the bloke walks in and he's like, "Hey," smack, smack, and then picks him up and closes the door.
To be fair, what I found was interesting about it is that I always was under the impression one and only villain in the film. So to me, the final act is quite shocking in regards to the fact that it was 3 guys, 3 horrible, well, technically 3.5, you could say, horrible pieces of work that just like were just as gruesome in different ways. Like the hitchhiker, obviously, and the guy from the gas station or the haberdashery, whoever it was. And there is just a collection of this horrible family, this messed up family doing all this stuff, and Leatherface just happens to be the face of it. So I just found that really interesting and disturbing for that reason.
I want to go into that properly when we start talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because like I don't know, it's one of those things where I almost feel like it takes away from Leatherface a little bit. But
Yeah,
I'll get
it
into
does
that
a
properly
bit.
when we go on to that.
I kind of want to say why, but there's no one here. There's no one here to talk about it. But yeah, like the whole thing about him being like a terrifying like monster, like the whole way through the film, and then you get to the end where they're doing the meal, they're having their
Yeah,
sit down dinner, and he's just basically a dog. And they just like not beat him, but they kind of he just goes,
yeah.
even though that was the point, he was supposed to be like mentally handicapped, and that's why he runs around with a chainsaw. But I remember, Rob, we talked about this film a long time ago, and you told me, "Oh, there was no blood in it."
To be fair, there was a lot less blood in it than I thought there'd be.
Yeah, I think it's got like a reputation that it's just like a splatter film, but it's not that.
Yeah, it's that inspired all the splatter films, but it's quite well shot in terms of like, and quite sedate in terms of you see him wield the chainsaw in the first scenes you see him, but it kind of like cuts away, or at least you see it from the top down. You never see the actual saw go into someone's body until like the end of the film, really.
Yeah,
Then
like
the
most of
final act.
the stuff that like most of the stuff that's like stuff that really like creeps me out is all suggested. Like you know the bit towards the end where they're putting the sledgehammer in like the granddad's hand and they're trying to like
Yeah.
kill her with that. Like
That
that's
was-
the stuff that really creeps me out. But that's like you don't really see any kind of like gore or anything from that. It's just
Right.
even when he puts the woman on the meat hook, you don't see a great deal. Like the most blood that you really see is just like dried blood on people's faces, or the
Yeah.
bit where where the hitchhiker cuts Franklin's arm.
Yeah, that was horrible. Yeah, that was the first bit you see, really.
Yes. I don't know. I think it's because I've watched so many different films with this kind of genre. I'm kind of desensitized. So like the whole end scene with them in the family and I just thought it was really I was laughing because it's so I don't know, so macabre. It's just kind of I just was laughing because it's just strange. I don't know, it's just me.
Yeah,
But
I do
like-
want to talk about that ending actually. I think that's when we get onto it. Yeah,
But I'm sure that the granddad is a vampire.
He did look messed up. He looks as almost as dead as the corpses.
Well, that's the thing. He gets the blood from the woman, and he starts
Yeah.
becoming animated again. So
Yeah.
I wonder if they're implying he's a vampire. Oh, actually, it's probably just to say that they're cannibals. Pretty much. Oh, that's one of my other. My two favorite scenes are definitely the wheelchair chainsaw moment. The wheelchair chainsaw moment, and also the realization when she looks in the cabinet
The wheelchair
Barber-
chainsaw massacre.
with and when she looks in the cabinet at the barbecue and you see like the hand and she's just like, oh,
that's the thing because like I don't know, watching it, so like because I'd already watched it. Watching it again this time, when they stop off and he's like, "Oh, do you want any barbecue?" Like I was kind of like, "No, no, no." And they kind of like knowing what he is really adds to it.
That's another thing where I've watched the two. I've seen the remake and the prequel. You know, the 2006 and 2009.
Yeah, I've got confused about how many there are and what ones are sequels and what ones are remake.
So them two films I've seen. So I kind of know the lore and everything. And then watching this, it was like I kind of knew most of the premise. like the fact that they're cannibals and then
Yeah.
he's yeah. Oh, another fun fact trivia. So basically, the bloke who played Leatherface, because the budget was so low, he only had one shirt, and they dyed it, and they couldn't wash it. So basically, he wore the same shirt for I don't know how many weeks they said. So the whole of the shooting, he wore the same thing, and they reckon by the end of it, no one would sit next to him. Sitting there because the smell was so bad.
That is kind of mad. Like their budget was that low that they couldn't afford a shirt.
Yeah, just why don't you just bring your own?
Yeah.
Only just say that.
Yeah.
I think that's what. Oh, what the fuck?
Your voice is really weird, Pat. Look, it
That's-
sounds like you're in a different room.
That's why.
Roger.
Do I sound better now?
Yeah.
You don't sound
Got
like
to-
a droid.
I forgot to bring my mic down.
I've got to say, the reason I give it production 10, did I give it 10 or 9? Whatever. The reason I give it a really high production is because the film, even though, yeah, you said it's dated, but it is like for what the budget was and how they did it, it reminds me of Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Like they've made a pretty fucking grim film that seems pretty realistic and terrifying, and it was cheap. It's just,
Yeah.
like, it blows my mind. It's all because there's clever filmmaking.
Yeah, I'd say that's a sort of the strengths. Like it,
Mm.
I think Evil Dead I prefer just a little bit, but this is still great in a lot of ways because it does have iconic scenes and moments that like they did this so well for the budget they had.
Yeah.
The sequels probably didn't capture that. You can just imagine it's not as effective.
Well, to be fair, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is pretty good.
Is it like as good as Evil Dead 2?
Oh no! It's like it's shit film good, but it's good. Yeah.
It's worth a watch because it's just
Mm.
because I what really got me is the close up of Leatherface. I'm like his mask
Oh.
looks really pants.
But you can see his teeth, and I think
Yeah.
how he did his teeth is really clever.
But yeah, I was just looking at his mask and I'm like, it just looks like a bit of cloth.
Was it supposed to be like skin of his victims or something?
Yeah.
Mm.
So when we get into the proper chat, whenever
If they don't appear, we might
if anyone else turns up and we just decide to start the chat, I'll tell you why I picked the 2 films, even though that Rob already saw it.
Sorry.
But I don't know. Is there anyone else going to turn up?
Simon, I think Emmanuel's still watching it.
Yeah.
Simon's out. Oh, Ben, I just realised you're in a new room.
Yes. Yeah. Look, the other room's getting a bit of a decoration kind of thing.
He's going for the old skin lamp and
Oh yeah, you like human skin lamp. Yeah. That's what's funny.
He was that inspired by an Ed Gein doubleheader.
yeah. Because just before the chat, so I could actually know what, because I kind of knew about the thing, that person, but I didn't know like the whole thing. But I watched the YouTube video about it, and I'm like, okay, I understand now why the 2 films are related to him.
Hmm.
Because reading Wikipedia is, well, it's Wikipedia.
I think when you like learn about him, there's certain things in Psycho that become a bit more like impactful.
Yeah.
It's really funny because I could have picked one of the films that Pat's going to pick as well.
Oh, I know. You can say.
This could have been a triple threat
Yeah. Well, I was
One
going
of
to
the
pick it
things
too.
Oh right, yeah.
because I could have picked what's it, Silence of the Lambs.
I
Silence of the
think
Lambs.
all 3 of us could have picked that.
Because that I didn't realize until there's a bit in the doc or like the video I watched. I'm like, oh, that's the bit from Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
So each of the films has got parts of the kind of the mythos or his notoriety, if that makes sense. But yeah,
That's
we're
right, yeah.
gonna start.
Yeah, might as well.
Yeah.
Actually,
Fine.
felt back.
Oh.
One sec.
Oh, okay. So we're not starting. Do, 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 do.
Didn't expect it to be such a poor turnout today.
It's Simon's birthday yesterday, wasn't it?
Simon, I can understand.
Quality films, Pat. Quality films.
I completely forgot about Alec having a social life.
Oh, wait a minute. He always complains about me not fucking. Me having a social life. Oh, fucking.
What I think has happened is Shin Godzilla broke everyone because it was so shit.
Oh, that's
Oh.
unfair.
Well, look, we have half the group that we had for the last call.
I can't argue with statistics. What are you eating, Dad?
Snickers.
Mm.
Mm.
Got some chicken wings that I barbecued earlier.
Mm.
Now we can begin.
A mouthful of Snickers.
Oh, then, Dan, why did you pick Psycho?
But I got a mouthful of Snickers. Oh.
He's got too many nuts in his mouth.
Oh.
These nuts.
This pleases the nut.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you bastard.
Bastards.
That's what I thought. So, why did I pick these films and the connection? So basically, I really wanted to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre for quite a long time. I remember having this kind of like mythos. It's kind of this scary film, and it's really shocking and all this. And I kind of knew bits about it anyway. And I've watched the remakes, which I shouldn't have done. I should have really watched the original first. But yeah, that's life. And
This things happens.
yeah, you happen to watch remakes of films that you shouldn't. But yeah, so I thought it was an opportunity to watch it, and then I had this round of picking a film with a link to another, and then I kind of, for some reason, I was reading about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it said about it. It was inspired by Ed Gein, if you know who Ed Gein is, or Gein. So he was a serial killer, well, reported serial killer back in the 40s.
Was it the first?
And basically, it inspired a lot of other films. So it inspired Psycho, which I picked as well. There's another film called Deranged, which is, I don't know, it looks a bit shit, but it's basically this. It's kind of Psycho and Texas Chainsaw Massacre mixed together. So it's a bit more like the actual thing, the actual true crime. But then you got what's it called? Silence of the Lambs as well. But no, basically the idea behind the serial killer was that he dug up dead bodies and started to use their skin to make. He made a bodysuit, a female bodysuit.
Oh.
He had lampshades. He had a bowl. He ate his breakfast cereal out of, but it was someone's skull.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah, I was watching in the
he
video.
just wanted some Cocoa Pops in a good bowl.
Exactly. But so the reason why it happened, why he kind of changed, this person was made, is basically his mum was really overbearing. So she basically told him that everyone was bad except for her because she had the Bible. So he got fixated with his mother. And so his life basically changed when she died. And he became even more fixated by literally digging it. I don't know if he dug her up, but he definitely dug up different women. And he reckons the reason he killed people was because he couldn't dig up the people in the graveyard because of how the ground,
Oh,
the ground getting so hard that he couldn't dig up people. But they also, because he kind of said he killed 2 people, but they, like in American, I don't know if it's American law, but basically in their system, to be a serial killer, you have to kill over 3 people. So there was a thing of him not really being one. But then they found out that there was like people gone missing, like multiple different people gone missing. And yeah, so that's how he become a serial killer. But yeah, so you can see the relatable traits of like Psycho, where he's really his overbearing mother caused him to have like a split personality. And then like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you got the like the dead animals and the dead people, kind of lampshades and all that. So yeah, it's pretty grim subject, but
Pretty grim, man. Pretty grim.
yeah, you could say that.
to be honest, I don't know why, but I find it quite fascinating. Like it's more the psychology behind why people do things, like why people do such extreme things like murdering people and like digging dead people up and taking parts. But yeah, it is. And oh, do you want to know how he got caught? He basically murdered someone in a shop. I think
He did what?
Ed Gein. He basically murdered someone in a shop and dragged them home, and the police followed the blood back to his house.
Wow, that's how he got caught.
That's how he got caught. And the weird thing was, they were saying because like he'd become a cannibal as well because of like the mental trauma he had. They were saying about he used to give people meat, and they was like, "Oh, did he feed us human meat?" But yeah, it's like really fucked. And he used to look after children as well.
Really?
And I reckon because of his stunted mental growth or whatever, it's basically because his mum, well, like treated him so bad and like mentally abused him into the fact of like, you can't go out because everyone's evil, women are the devil, all this. He had like a childlike mind. So yeah, people used to let him look after their children, but they had no idea that. And then kids would say to their parents, "Oh yeah, he's got like shrunken heads and like weird masks," and they just thought they're being children. So yeah, it was like this thing that went on for like years. But yeah, it's just pretty fucked. But yeah, I just find it fascinating why people do what they do. And it's like anything, like Jack the Ripper, and also like fictional monsters, like I don't know, Friday the 13th, Freddy Krueger. Then it's kind of like, why do these people do these things? Like, why? What extreme behavioral traits? I just find really fascinating. Yeah, so that's why I picked the films, because I'm morbid.
I do think that's something that's really interesting about both of them. It's just like considering why they're doing what they're doing. Like in Psycho, I think it's so well set up where you have like I forget her name now, but is it Janet Leigh, where she's driving to the.
Oh,
sorry, I muted myself. She's like driving to the hotel. And like you can see she's got kind of like an anxious brain because she's like imagining what people are saying about her and she's like replaying things in her head. And then when you get that scene where Norman Bates goes into his house and there's like a conversation with his mother, like I just think it's so cool because it's like when you get the bit at the end where like he's thinking in her voice and then you think back to it and it's like, well, was I hearing something that Norman Bates was thinking? Was I hearing something that she was thinking? And yeah, I just think it's so well done. Like it's a really nice idea for a twist because you never really know what's going on because everyone's so sort of like neurotic, and yeah, the way they present it, I just think it's so cool.
It's really strange. I say really strange. It's kind of got one of them horror tropes or ghost tropes, like when they say to him, "But his mother was been dead for 10 years," and it's like. I remember when I read one of the Lovecraft short stories, and they did that, and it's like, oh, there's been noises from the neighbors next door, but no one's lived there for whatever years, and I'm like, oh god, that trope, and then I'm thinking to myself, yeah, this was written in the 20s. This is not a. This is when like it was born. The trope of like, and then they were dead. Or they've been dead for years, and it's just when they say that bit, it's kind of like the realization of the whole film is just like, what the fuck? Because I can imagine for the time period, like, because you think it was 1960, you think a lot of people will be like,
yeah. I think that's the thing, though. I think that's why Psycho is better than that trope, because you can interpret it as like his mum is an evil spirit who's possessing him. Or you can interpret, which I prefer, you can interpret it as like, man, this guy's mum has affected him on such a level that he's killing people and then justifying it by, in his own head, speaking as her and sort of convincing himself that she's doing it and he's not. And yeah, I think that's so cool.
Yeah, I do agree with that way, because it is like you could look at it as a multiple personality disorder he has, and his childhood and his upbringing has warped him in such a degree. He isn't himself, or he isn't who he was when he's anymore. So that guy, that especially the end of Psycho, where they get the psychologist trying to analyze everything and just explain it all, just so like eye-opening, and so like you would look at him in a different way in regards. Not that you excuse him in any way, but you're fascinated, and the reason why he does what he does suddenly makes more sense.
I just love the fact that the whole film you're thinking, oh yeah, so his mum has got him to kill these people because like he's been like indoctrinated by her, so he does what she says. But then you find out it's just his he's got like a split personality. It's like, holy fuck. It's even worse.
I mean, that's a really cool part of the twist as well, though, because like from the shower scene where like you only see kind of like a silhouette of a dress, you're kind of going like, oh man, like his mum really doesn't want him to speak to other women. And then later on, when you realise it's him, it's like, oh, it was him. And then you get a bit further, and then it's like, no, but it was him, but his mum really didn't want him to speak to other women, and that's why he's like that now. It's really cool.
Yeah, even the bit when he goes through the door and you can hear the voice is different. You can hear it's the like a female voice when he's like, eh.
That scene though, like where you see his mum's corpse like that, that really trips me out every time. Just like, cause she turns around, it's like, it's just like, oh man, I hate it. It really, it seems tame now, but like I don't know. When I watched it, I was like, it was in my bedroom and it was dark, and then that happened, and my first thought was to go like, oh, that looks a bit funny now, and then literally 5 seconds later, I was like, no, I feel a bit uneasy.
It's really funny. There's a bit of trivia for that as well. So basically, when you see her on the chair, it's a 4-legged chair. But when she goes up to it and it turns round, there's no way that it could spin like.
I did see that. Yeah, I did. It sort of like you see her arm move the body, but you have to like assume that it swivels round. But you're right, it's not a chair that can swivel.
It doesn't swing round. So but yeah, it's really funny because I remember seeing it before, and it's like, oh my god! But then when you see it again, when you know what's going to happen, it's so slow. So I'm like, oh yeah, it's the skull. Oh yeah, it's kind of, I won't say comical, but it's so slow where it should have been a lot kind of more impactful if it had just like spun a bit more. Yeah. But yeah, it's still great.
Where it's 62 years old now, there are a few moments where you kind of going like, oh, I'm not sure. Yeah. Like the scene where the guy from 12 Angry Men gets stabbed in the forehead and then
Yeah, and he's going down the stairs like
walks
this.
backwards.
Yeah, I always remember that being silly. But it's hard to, you can't really imagine how they would have shot it any other way apart from him walking down slowly.
Yeah.
It's impossible to shoot without it actually happening.
The great thing about that is the premise of him going backwards and then just falling down is the fact that he's kind of his feet are like skipping the steps. But the problem is, if you was at that angle and you were skipping the steps, you'd just fall over. You wouldn't just say stand upright and go.
Yeah, you just barrel roll yourself.
Yeah.
Because when you get to the end of the stairs, when you actually see his feet, he's doing that. He's like tripping down the stairs. But then the way kind of he does that instead of doing that, he kind of should go.
But it's also the angle of it as well, because like, I mean, to be fair, on a technical level, I imagine like filming it was actually quite difficult because you kind of got like a high angle and he's sort of going downstairs at the same time. And like, yeah, technically it's pretty cool, but I just think it looks really campy now because it's like, I don't know, it's almost like watching a zombie in reverse.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can't think about how they would do it in any other way at the time. It's just impossible.
Or did they just have a read? We want to film something from downstairs, but in like a slow motion. And they're like, the only way we can do it is have him kind of on a thing where the camera follows him down. And they're like, that doesn't make any sense. We're gonna do it. But yeah, there are some bits in it that are a bit like, I remember Alec was saying at your barbecue, Rob, about the little bit of paper.
Yeah.
It's like, because I didn't realize because I'd not watched it in a while, so I couldn't really remember the bit. But when she finds it, you're like, actually, wait a minute, it's probably like this big.
Yeah.
And now would she?
I don't think that's terrible though. Like it's.
I think you still might not notice something like that. It could just flick out your hand just for when you blink or something. Who knows?
Especially when you're looking for like not something specific, but you're looking for clues. You wouldn't probably notice something small because you're looking for big items like, I don't know, someone's clothes or something out of it, like even notices the curtain's not there. That's legit. Like, but yeah, she just looks around and goes, oh, look at this tiny bit of paper in the toilet that says 4. But the thing is, it was supposed to be like a little sliver, but she did the maths, so she actually did like 40 minus, so it'd have had to be about that big. Because you see the sum that she does, even though how can you not know what 700 take away 40,000 is?
I don't know, the only thing that I'm like on the fence with about that bit is like, I don't know. At first, I was like, I don't know why you would do that sum on paper, because it's just like, well, you just spent $700 kind of thing. But then I was like, well, to be fair, like back then you didn't have things like, I don't know, like banking apps and that kind of thing. So maybe you would keep track of it like that. I don't know.
People did have receipts, and there were like everything that had to be written down had to be kept in some sort of like invoice or something. So everyone was more on that. Right, it's something that you could figure out in your head, even for idiots like me that can't do it. It's quite a simple one.
But the main problem is, if you're stolen money from someone and you don't want evidence of it, you don't write down, 40,000 minus 700. Because it's like, this is evidence. You've just made evidence, and then you're going to throw it down the toilet.
They should have done like a zoom in on the piece of paper, so it said like 40,000 and then in brackets stolen.
This is my evidence. It's like,
and it's one of those things. It's like one scene that I just felt was slightly jarring, but it didn't ruin the film. Is that when she goes to the car salesman and tries to get her car swapped over, and sells her car and gets a new one, even though the policeman across the road is watching her. It's like defeats the point of really getting another car if he can see exactly what car she's got,
and he had enough time to look at the number plate.
Yes, and that's enough as well before that gets across.
Well, the thing is, if he went like, oh, I've got a notepad, C1, 2, whatever. It's like, yeah, I didn't. I didn't really understand the fact that she was being paranoid about stuff. I understand, okay, she's a bit nervous about it, but she looks so fucking obvious that she'd done something wrong that people were like, why are you acting weird? It's like you've not really done any, or you've done something wrong, but it's not like you've done a massive crime. And it's
Yeah.
just so blatant, like when he does the interview with Norman Bates. Norman Bates is like, it's like, oh, I'm not giving away anything. I'm not really scared.
But he's sus.
It's just so fucking.
That scene with the car salesman, though, like that's so perfect for a parody. Because like that is like you were saying when he says like, "Oh, you're acting like you're being chased or something," or something like that. Like you just needed her being like, "Yeah, but that guy over there."
Exactly.
It's such a silly scene, man. And the bit as well, like there's a bit of dialogue that's just like it's so dated, and it's where he's like, "Oh, you got a mind to do what you want. You're a woman, so I'm sure you will." It's just-
Like,
yeah, that whole scene's so weird, man. So weird. Even the bit where like she's made it so obvious that she wants to swap this car here and there, and then they agree on a car, and she's like, "Yeah, I'll take it." And then he's like, "Oh, you don't even want a day and a half to think about it?" And it's like, no, there's somebody staring at her from across the road. Like,
Yeah, she needs to go. There's no talking about it.
Like, everyone in that scene just behaves so weird.
Yeah, it's a
Oh,
shame those bits hold it that back, but otherwise, I still think the story is so like iconic and still
Yeah.
kind of like it's there. At the time, it was quite unique, and even now it still is because what I remember when I first saw it is that it's one of the first films that kind of like kills off their main protagonist halfway through the film, practically.
Mm,
And not many
yeah.
films and not many horror films have done it since or don't do it enough. The fact you
Yeah.
have to have the sister and the detective come in to kind of like become surrogate protagonist to try and solve the case in that regard, and it's really quite interesting.
Yeah, I will say that that's like a huge plus for it is that I mean, like I know we've been talking about the things that are dated about it, but like the fact that it's 62 years old and that shower scene still like is it really takes you aback because it's literally like a main character being killed like an hour into the film. And it's yeah, I can't think of many other films that would do that.
No,
even to be honest, all of the kind of murder scenes in the film are pretty solid still. Like even the bit when he walks out of the room and gets the bloke on the stairs, like that bit where it just outside and smack.
Mm,
It's just like, oh,
yeah.
even though
Do you
you know it's
Oh, sorry.
coming, it's just you know it's coming if you've watched it and you're like, and then he just fucking runs out and stabs him.
Mm.
Brutal.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine now because it's like so iconic. But apparently, the shower scene was originally not going to have any score. It was just going to be like,
yeah, it was just gonna be this gigantic sound just of the screaming. That's
yeah,
it.
yeah. Which I don't know. I mean, it's hard to separate it because like the score's so iconic. But I don't know. I'd be really interested to see an edit of it where there's no score.
Because the story behind that was that Hitchcock wanted it to be silent, and then the bloke who was doing the score for the film did the score. He just did the music, and then he went, "There you go," and he showed it to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, actually, this is going to be in the film." Yeah, literally, the bloke didn't. He just wrote the music.
Yeah, that's mad, isn't it?
But yeah, it's that scene. No, because when I watched it again, I was looking at the face to see if you can see it's actually Norman Bates, because you can see a face, but it's very dark, so you
Yeah.
don't actually can't see it properly. But I was trying to look to see if you can actually see.
I think the thing though, like, I mean, with something like that, back then you'd have had a lot more control over it because there wasn't people watching it on like loads of different devices and that kind of thing. Like, it literally would have been like a flash in the cinema for most people.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's solid.
I really think Norman Bates, or what was the actor's name? I felt he was just incredibly convincing in my opinion, just how he kind of like holds himself together and how he kind of portrays himself as like the awkward and kind of like withdrawn, but still quite enthusiastic young man that you wouldn't suspected him of being horrible, but as it goes on, you can see that he's got these little tics and these strange quirks that kind of make him a bit like, oh, there's something up with him. And I think he does a lot of that with just his mannerisms and his eyes as well. And I thought he just like sold it. Anyone else doing that role would have had a tough time, but I think he did it in a way that you could really believe this guy would be real.
Yeah. So you said about the ticks, when he's eating the candy corn or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Basically, that was ad-libbed. So that I think they wanted them to have bits in the film that they want probably to make the character a bit more believable, like stuff that ain't scripted. And then, one of the things was the bloke who played Norman Bates. He chose to eat candy corn. I didn't realise it was candy corn. I actually had to look in the picture. Look in the film, and you can see it just says candy corn on the back. But yeah, so a lot of it was, ad-libbed. But yeah, his characters. It's great when the character. He seems pretty, say, normal. He comes across as a bit awkward, and then as time goes on, you notice the changes a lot. So like when he goes into the room and she kind of makes the questions and he starts to he gets defensive and his face changes and and he goes, you can see that kind of personality change going on in the scenes, even though you don't know it's happened, you don't know what it's about, or you don't know it's a thing. But when you watch it again and you know the story, you notice that he's got that kind of split personality.
I do think that's another thing that's like, I mean, you can take it as a bit campy now, but I think it's actually really effective because if you're watching it thinking like, this is a guy who's like cleaning up after his mum's killed someone and like he's trying to cover for her, like you would be on the back foot and you would be quite nervous about having that conversation. So it's like, I don't know. I think you can like draw it out as something that's like, I don't know, a little bit 60s, I suppose. But yeah, I still think it's a really effective scene. And also, I don't know, I kind of like that kind of like noir stuff.
Yes.
Oh,
Emmanuel's done.
Whoa.
He's gonna be like traumatized to watch.
He's gonna be like, why did you make me watch this film? Oh, he's on.
Can't take a shower again.
Wait,
shower. What?
What?
Where are you, Emmanuel?
Shower? Huh?
Where are you?
I'm in Central London. Oh, we're in Central London.
Well, certainly not watching the movie.
Yeah, someone's birthday.
Ah, right.
Happy birthday, Pat.
Hey.
No, we just joke. And saw my mom as well. Anyway, since we're going underground, should I say something quick and go? Or
Yeah, you go for it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Have you watched them both, Emmanuel?
Yeah.
Oh, nice one, man.
I need to score them. Psycho, I don't think I need to say much. Just classic. Just very well done. I love how just everything around it at the time and how it was done, what it is. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I think it was well done, ish. I think it was. I thought it was decent, like, in terms of how it was made and whatnot. I did not enjoy it one bit.
Oh.
But I realized in Pat, I'm not sure if it's the games or the TV show, but there's a reference to Texas Chainsaw Massacre story in The Walking Dead. I didn't realize that.
Oh, is there?
It might be I think it might be the game instead of the TV show. But there's a point where they go to a cannibalistic family's house. They don't obviously realize that at first, but they end up at a house and they kind of chop up people and like feed them. And yeah, I think it's a reference anyway to this kind of story. But I didn't actually realize that at the time. Anyway, I get why. Oh, I think I get why you picked it then, for multiple reasons. I think it's good for what it was. I just didn't enjoy it.
I gather you wouldn't, because it's not. If you're not into them type of films like I am, you're not really going to enjoy it because it's pretty grim.
Yeah.
I won't say I enjoy it. I think it's more of a, I don't know. Well, to be honest, I watch a lot of gory films, so
I honestly thought the granddad was dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he's just barely alive.
Well, I'm sure he's a vampire because when he has the blood and wait a minute, Emmanuel.
No, it's based on like a vaguely true story. They're just cannibals.
Emmanuel, are you a Liverpool Street?
Yeah.
Yes, I recognise.
Oh, you've given away his location to everyone.
Oh no!
Brett.
I walk past that every day.
Oh, do you?
But you're basically near where I work.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Nice.
I recognise it.
Are you not working at Canary Wharf anymore then?
I never worked at Canary Wharf.
Oh, I thought you did. What did I think you did?
I don't know.
Now everyone knows where Dan works.
Oh.
Maybe
if you turn around,
those parts out. Post.
well, Liverpool Street is quite a big place, so.
Anyway, yeah, cool. Take care, y'all, and I'll try and catch up later.
Yeah.
Hey, catch you in a bit, man.
See you later, man.
Bye.
You did.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, I totally know where he is. Like, I recognise the environment.
What's the postcode?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, it's Broadgate. Yeah, I knew that Emmanuel wasn't going to like it. Like, because what got me with Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the actual beginning of it. Because I didn't know, I'd never seen it before, and I only know the iconic bits because it's like one of them films that you can't get away from it. It's like fucking Titanic and Psycho and I don't know, fucking Shawshank Redemption. You know everything about that film, even though you've never watched it. And the bit at the start where you see the fucking head, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
Yeah,
and then it pans down, and it's the sculpture person. I'm just like, "What the actual fuck?"
Yeah, it's very Hannibal.
And the disabled bloke wanking into a can.
Oh yeah, Dan, you don't know about that.
Oh man,
what is? Oh, is that what that's supposed to be?
No, it's not.
Oh, is that what Pat thought it was?
Yeah.
Why
Let me
find
it in the chat.
I don't know.
Oh,
so basically, what happened was Pat watched it first, and he said, "Oh, straight off the bat, we've got a masturbation scene." And when he said it, I was sat there thinking, "I don't remember this, but maybe it's just something I've forgotten." And then I watched the film, and I got about halfway through, and I was like, "Hang on," he said straight off the bat. So I was like, "Pat, I'm about halfway through this. I still haven't seen this scene. Like, have you watched the right one?" And he was at work at the time, so I did, and I actually watched both remakes. And there's a scene in the Michael Bay remake where it's kind of close to that. So I was thinking, oh no, Pat's accidentally watched the Michael Bay remake. and then later on, he sent a message, and let me find this message because it cracked me up. Where is it?
Michael Bay remake.
Yeah, the 2009 one or wherever it is.
Was
the one
it
with
Michael
Jessica
Bay?
Biel in. Yeah, it's Michael Bay.
I think that was Michael Bay's studio. He didn't do it himself.
I don't think
I think he produced it.
Yeah, it's Platinum Dunes, isn't it?
Yeah, but where is
gonna
it?
say,
You've
fucking
been
Michael Bay
arguing
did
about
it.
The Boys since this happened, haven't you?
Yeah. There's a lot been said.
I can't lie. The remake is worth watching just because as a its own film, it's actually quite, I'll say quite good. It's quite gory, but
It's a lot gorier than the original.
oh yeah, they actually show you people getting hit with a chainsaw. There was a bit in the prequel that always got me, and they get the chain. He gets the chainsaw, and the woman's hiding underneath the bench, and he puts the chainsaw through, and she just gets covered in blood, and it's so fucking grim. But yeah, God. But I can't believe you, Pat. Why would he fucking get off the?
Yeah, they'd stop the car just for him to get out and wake
And
him
To
up.
be fair, I watched it when I got home from the barbecue, and this was like at 11:30 at night. So I was.
I watched it last night after being awake since 4 o'clock.
So this was the message that Pat sent, right? So this was after I watched the remake, thinking he'd accidentally watched that, and I sent a message saying, "Pat, did you watch Jessica Biel thinking she was around in 1974?" And he replied to saying no, and then he replied to my other message asking if he'd watched the right film, saying, "Bloke in the wheelchair gets out of the van with a can and puts it next to his knob before he's sent rolling down the hill. To be fair, he might be having a piss."
The thing is, I think what's happened is I'm so used to people picking films where there's chronic masturbation in them, and I'm putting 2 and 2 together and getting a million.
I was just like, man, imagine like how bold you'd have to be to stop a whole van of people so you can sit outside and do that into a can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To be fair, he's disabled, so they'll do things more for him.
Especially as his sister's in the van.
Imagine that road trip where he just goes, "Can we just pull up for a second?"
Yeah, can we just stop? Well, I'm just in a desperate need.
I'm desperate need for a.
I could imagine John doing that.
Oh,
Shall I change us over to Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Well, we're already talking about the wanking, so yes.
yeah. Well,
Oh, do you want to do favourite scenes in Psycho before we?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we should.
and I haven't said much about Psycho anyway.
Oh yeah, go for it, man.
So like, I mean, wouldn't be able to add too much to what you guys have already said. Like, for me, Alec had an issue with the killings and no blood, but I don't think that was really the point. Obviously, in that sort of era, blood wasn't really a thing. Like nudity wasn't really a thing. Like I think people were sort of thrown aback by the Carry On films because there was more skin shown than any other film that they'd seen at the time. So, like the sort of noir feel to it, it was more about the tension that was built, which you get from every Hitchcock film, and I think he absolutely nailed it. It's the reason why it's considered one of the best films ever made.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think in
But yeah.
1960 it would have been really shocking.
Yeah.
Like, what was your thing, Ben, about the production code?
What do you mean about the? Oh, well, how they couldn't show stuff and things like that. Yeah, I think that's something that everyone should bear in mind, is that it pushed the boundaries of how much blood and violence and nudity and sex to begin with were shown in films back in that era, because women in, like, you see Marion straight away in her bra and her panties, basically, and that had not been shown in anything else before that film. And the insinuation there was enough for everyone to be like, "Oh shit, what's going on?" And obviously that happens a couple of times. You see her like in that state, and obviously you see her in the shower too, and that was quite scandalous. And obviously things.
scandalous.
Yes, it was indeed. Yeah.
Okay.
So even the blood and gore and even though there wasn't much of it, it was still quite risque at that point in time. because I think
Mhm.
she had to wear certain things to stop her from being completely naked, and obviously Hitchcock cut away and just right at the right moment, so you don't see too much of her body. But it was still a lot back then.
I think like now it's a PG, right?
No, I think it's still a 12, but yeah, I
Oh,
think
is it?
still
I
quite.
don't think you want your kids watching it.
No.
Oh, it's a 15 now.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
But,
One person said, which is quite funny, I feel like it says it all about what everyone was thinking at the time. Apparently, when Hitchcock did Psycho, when he announced he was going to do it, and all the media and the press decided, realized what his next film was. It's the equivalent of today of Steven Spielberg doing Bride of Chucky. That's what they say. It's the closest thing to it is that he's a director renowned for his epic thrillers and quite very, very slow and methodical dramas. And him doing a horror movie was just like no one could wrap their head around it, and they thought it was beneath him. But he kind of elevated it and made a horror movie that had a lot more depth and nuance than anything else had been done before.
It's kind of like the reaction that people had when Green Mile come out and they realized that it had an attachment to Stephen King. Like, 'cause
when
it
what
was
came out, sorry?
when Green Mile come out, because it was very
Oh.
different to what he had written before. And yeah,
I suppose it's a bit like Stanley Kubrick and The Shining, really. Like,
yeah,
But I suppose with Stanley Kubrick, like the difference is that like he kind of did that thing where like he made the great sci-fi film and then he made the great war film and then it was just him trying to make the next great horror film. But
Yeah.
And then he made Clockwork Orange.
Well, yeah, that's what's so good about Kubrick. He is like Hitchcock. He can do like different
The greatest
genres.
depravity.
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's one of them things where all of them films are quite bold in their kind of message. If that makes sense. They're kind what is it? They're like quite hard hitting subjects, even though that 2001 Space Odyssey is more of it's like a showing the human condition or humanity. It's like a strong. I've never watched it. Oh, actually, funny enough. Yeah, so is Psycho probably one of the first quote unquote slasher films?
Yeah,
It's considered the first slasher, isn't it?
Is
Like,
it? Because that's another connection that these two films have. They're kind of the what do you call it? The founding. They're like the beginnings of their genre. I mean, or the most iconic. It's like Psycho is the most iconic horror film, and it kind of spawned horror films, and then Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of it spawned the slasher monster film kind of genre. So then, if you look at like Halloween, and then Nightmare on Elm Street, and then Friday the 13th, kind of all these films were spawned from that film.
I think that's another thing that's like really interesting about this double bill actually, because like Psycho is considered as like the film that sort of started this whole thing. Because if you think like horror films before Psycho would have been like your creature features and like ghost stuff, wouldn't they?
Yeah, there would have been like monster movies and like proper psychological, more like supernatural stuff. You're right.
Yeah. So like yeah, I mean yeah, so you've got Psycho, which is considered as like the first film where like the horror is a human being, and
Yeah,
and then it's I don't know, it's amazing to me that like when Psycho came out, like as tame as it looks now, it was really controversial and it got censored and like all of this kind of stuff. And then it was only 14 years later the Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out. And then that started what was basically like the golden age of slasher films. Because then not long after that you had things like Halloween, Black Christmas, and
Yeah.
because I think Black Christmas is supposed to be one of them other ones that are like the full forefather of the slasher. Well, I'd say that's more of the slasher genre, that kind of format. Such, I think with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it hasn't got that format because they're very predictable. That's the problem with that kind of Black Christmas, kind of Halloween. They have a predictable thing where you see you don't see the bad guy, you only see like the silhouette, and you kill someone, and it's only halfway through the film or near the end of the film where they become apparent who they are, and then you have the final girl kind of trope. So that whole kind of, I think that's what kind of makes Texas Chainsaw Massacre different. It was I don't know, it was in that era of them making like cinematic kind of like films, but then it kind of become this thing of it inspired a lot of people to make that kind of genre. It's weird because if you look at the camera angles, I just love all the camera angles in that film, just work so well. Like they reckon that the one that comes underneath the swing, when she's on the swing and it kind of comes down and she gets off. I think she gets off, or they reckon that wasn't going to be in the film. And then they did it, and they was like, actually, this is really good, and it's become it's become one of the most iconic scenes in the film. But like the way that the suspense is not with like the characters, it's the camera angles, because it's the people are not centered, they're off to an angle, and the camera's looking in the doorway, and you're thinking what's going to come out the doorway. Like when the bloke in the wheelchair goes through the house, he's going through, but you're thinking, okay, you've seen a car. There's a bit before that where you see a car go past and you think, oh, this is going to be that bloke, or someone's going to come along and do something. But that whole scene, nothing happens. But there's so much kind of tense moments where it's like an abandoned house and they're doing these things and they're looking and it's a bit strange. That literally that bit is the bit that builds up the tension. And then the icebreaker is basically the bloke goes in the house and then Leatherface gets him. But that it's really strange because it's quite muted, because he doesn't scream and it doesn't like become a big like explosion of a moment. It kind of it's kind of muted, and then when you see the other people, they don't obviously they don't know that things happened, but as an audience you're like, oh fuck, like they don't know what's happening, and then you see them go to the house and you're like, oh god, they're gonna get fucked. And it works so well as like a scene setting kind of like bringing up the intensity, because there's no one there, but you know what's going to happen, or you have some clue that they're going to get attacked by this massive man with someone's face on his face. But yeah, they kind of, they're the forefathers of modern horror, definitely. Like the amount of things that people do like in films now where they've got the same kind of, it's like the whole final girl thing. I think that actually spawned from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because
the final woman surviving,
the survivor. It's kind of, that whole thing is just so common now. If you watch any fucking slasher film, it's always going to have one person, particularly a woman.
Before we get too much into Texas Chainsaw Massacre, should we do favourite scenes for Psycho and then?
We derailed it. We done what we normally do. We just.
He wants to go first.
Right, I'll go first because this is my film and it's my rules. No, so with Psycho,
Rob's giving up.
Rob don't care.
He's not going to hear what I said. What's he doing?
It sucked.
It's really funny. When we started the conversation, you walked away, Ben. I was like, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
And I was still here. I was just going to the fridge, which is literally there.
Oh, okay.
What a plot twist.
I don't. I think with Psycho, it's got to be the shower thing, and it's just because how iconic it is. Like in if like you asked anyone in the world what the most iconic scene in cinema is, they will probably say that, just because of like it's the sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sounds one. Yeah,
The sound and the music so good.
It's
I think
so
Psycho is a good contender for best sound this year.
Yeah.
because it's so
Very much.
iconic with that film. And it's a bit like Jaws with the dun dun dun
Yeah.
dun. And yeah, it's just, and then after you find out bits about it, like the fact that they used chocolate syrup to make the blood,
Yeah.
You'd only get away with that. You'd only get away with that in black and white.
black and white.
Yeah, I was going to say that the reason, like, one of the big reasons why they did it in black and white is because they couldn't get the blood right, and that's probably another reason why there was minimal blood, because the blood wasn't working and they couldn't figure out something. So he
That's
sort of
really
like,
interesting.
let's do this in black and white, and it'll look more effective, and it would just have the same sort of impact.
Because
So it worked.
I think the problem you would have is red is quite a mid-tone color. Just it's giving some color theory. Yeah, so if you'd have put the blood in the water, you probably wouldn't have actually seen it at all, because it would have probably got diluted quite fast. But yeah, like red on the color palette is very mid, and if you look to the scene, it doesn't have bright spots and dark spots. It's quite mid-tone heavy. Oh, I've got a fun fact about that scene as well. So the bit where just before that, so basically, you know the bit when she flushes the toilet?
Mhm.
I was reading on the X-ray. First time in in history of film that they actually had a toilet in a movie scene.
Yeah.
It's the first time and it flushed. And I'm like, what a bizarre thing not to have a toilet in a scene in a
It
film.
was risque and overall.
But yeah, like,
I think Pat's going to give us another toilet.
Yeah.
oh no.
Nah. I'm trying to get myself more comfortable. I've got a sore back.
The thing was, I didn't really want to say the shower scene was the most my favorite scene, because I felt it was too much of because it's iconic, everyone's going to pick it. And I was trying to think of other ones, and then I'm thinking, but the most iconic part of the film, and probably the most poignant thing, is that scene. So yeah, that's I'd say that was my favorite scene. But yeah, that's about that. Yeah.
I think mine is when Janet Leigh first arrives at Bates Motel, because it's like, I don't know, I really like the atmosphere of those like sort of like bad place horrors, and it's just I think the way that like Hitchcock sort of does it all, where I don't know, where it's like filmed from sort of low angles, and where you've got the house in the background on the hill, it's just like, man, something bad's gonna happen. And I really love all that stuff.
You got that foreboding feel, didn't you?
Yeah. So it's, I don't know, I don't want to quote Simon, but it's almost like a Scooby-Doo episode. It's like, this is where it's all
Kind of.
happening.
That's a better comparison than the one that you gave.
Yeah, you're right.
Because it does have a detective in it.
Yeah.
We're going away with too with that meddling Norman Bates.
And I would have gotten away with it too if I didn't have to dress as my mother every time.
It would have worked, because he would have took the mask off, or he took the wig off. Oh no, it's normal.
Yeah. But that scene though, that ending scene where he sort of runs in with a knife and he's dressed as his mum, like, I don't know, like that's such a familiar scene now. Like they even do it in Scream, didn't they?
Yeah, where he just runs like a maniac with a knife.
Yeah, where he kind of like comes in and then somebody grabs the knife and like you've got that struggle. Like that's like the first scene of Scream, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right.
Yes.
What's your favourite scene, Ben?
There were quite a lot of great contenders, obviously. But I think I think it's the final few moments of the film that really just make it iconic for me.
Mm.
It's just you get obviously the psychologist giving his rundown about the mind of Norman and how the whole thing has just come to pass because he has because of his obsession with his mother and everything. And then you just cut to him in the cell, just talking. You think it's his mother in there, but it's just him, just in the shower, just talking to himself with the voiceover, and he's just sitting there and just crouched over, and he just looks up into the camera. And I just posted the GIF now of that scene. It's just like perfectly. It's just his glare and his expression on the face, and the fact that there's this slight transition of like the skull over superimposed to his face just before it cuts to black and to the car coming out the swamp. I felt that it was just a powerfully unforgettable shot. I think it was really, really powerful.
Mm. That car in the swamp, actually, when he was doing that, I was thinking that is something that you would never get away with now, because footage of that would be everywhere by the time you got it in there. What's yours, Pat?
For me, it's probably the scene where Janet Leigh and what's his face?
Norman Bates.
Yeah, Norman Bates was in that room while she was eating. Sort of, you got a feel of what both characters were about. Like, you felt like obviously you'd seen what she'd done in the lead up, obviously trusted with a lot of money to put in the bank, and she's decided to run off with it, but she's obviously feeling a little bit guilty as well, and she's obviously trying to hide out there, and he is sort of struggling with his inner demons, and you can see it come out in little bits during that scene. I thought that was really cool the way they put it together.
Yeah. That is a good scene, actually, because I don't know, you kind of build an empathy for him, don't you?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh man, this guy's just got like a difficult mum, and he just wants to get to know this woman.
Yeah, and how it's shot as well, just how the shadows and lighting of this room with all the stuffed birds all around him. Very, very powerful.
You also got the feel that he wanted to sort of set up something more meaningful with her, but she sort of was a bit pushed back, and he's then got in his head that once she's gone back to her room, he's gonna strike.
Yeah.
Oh, you say about the bit where she goes to her room. You know, when he looks through the hole in the wall, I'm like, how would you not notice that there's a hole in the wall? Because it's a big fucking hole. You notice that there's a fucking.
To be fair, we don't see what it looks like on the other side. It might be in another picture or something. Hard to say.
Hey, you never know. She might like glory holes.
Maybe she saw it and thought, well,
fucking hell, Pat.
It happens.
I'm just thinking about like Ben's favourite scene at the end. I think it's more impactful that they explain what happened.
Yeah.
To the showing it. Like the fact, because it's like a horror story. It's like a ghost story. It's like you tell a story about, and there was this person 100 years ago, and they loved this person, and sadly, the person got murdered. And it like when you're reading a story like that, it's much more impactful because your imagination is taking over. It's So like when they're explaining, like, so his mother found a lover. But no, basically
they call me Mr.
I want to thank my mother.
So like the fact that he murders her by poisoning both of them, and then he kind of gets guilty, and then there's like a minute breakdown, and it's like that kind of, when you find out about that kind of situation, it's a lot more impactful. And then there's a cut scene and it shows you happening. It's just like, it's just so good. Like when you read like horror, I say horror literature. I've only really read Lovecraft stuff, but when they describe stuff like that, it's just so. Oh, because I can imagine like what would happen, or you can see it in your mind, and it's so more, much more chilling when they're just explaining like, oh, this really grim situation and this happened and this is why he fragmented his mind, and it's just like, oh, so good, so good.
Yeah.
So we're gonna